Hey guys, I am Dr. Victoria Munoz, and actually Teresa Romero is with me tonight. We are actually doing two separate videos. I'm on my camera, she's on her camera, and we, on a daily basis, get multiple questions about HGH, its benefits, and some of the questions are a little more complex than others. Some are, a little simpler, like, in terms of the benefits, for example. Others are a little more complex, like, comparing it to different peptides that, we might be using to also enhance the effects or to boost HGH in the human body. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to do a Q&A, and Teresa Romero is kind enough to ask me some questions, and she's going to interview me about these benefits, and hopefully we'll get a lot of your questions answered tonight. If there are any questions that we don't answer tonight, please leave them in the description below, or you can also private message us, and we'll be sure and address them on our next episode. So I'm going to hand it over to Teresa.
Hi, okay. I just want to say hello, everybody. We have two different Facebook Lives going on. So you could hear Dr. Munoz in the background speaking. You'll hear me in the background of her video speaking. We were trying to try something different to see how it plays out. So we're a little experimentation going on. So I'm going to ask Dr. Munoz a few questions. Please let me know if you guys can hear her. And if you can hear her, then good. And if not, let me know so we can kind of play around and make sure everything is all good in the hood.
Yeah, guys, give us a thumbs up. And if you're having a hard time with the sound of Teresa from my video or vice versa, let us know, and we'll situate ourselves a little bit differently so that everything comes through clearly. So
yes, that'll be great. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get started with questions. Nobody's answered whether or not they could hear both me and Dr. Munoz, so I'm just going to assume it's a yes and get started with the questions. And then you guys message whenever you want on there, comment, and let me know if you can't for some reason hear it. All right. Okay, Christy gave us a thumbs up, so I think
all right.
Good to go.
Good.
Right. Dr. Munoz.
What's
so
up?
Many questions about HGH.
There are.
What is HGH exactly?
Well, this is a great question, and this is like the broadest question that comes up. And HGH actually is a hormone secreted by the pituitary gland. This gland sits up in front of the center of the brain, and its purpose is to promote cellular growth and regeneration. So it's necessary in childhood for the developing human body, but it is biologically turned off by about the age of 25. So natural HGH exists as a combination of molecular isomers, and 22 kilodalton form is the form that is secreted into circulation. This this natural occurring HGH actually has a half-life of about 15 minutes. Now, in contrast, pharmaceutical form has a half-life of about 4 hours. So HGH is the mother of all hormones. And this means that it affects every other hormone down the chain, including testosterone, thyroid hormone, cortisol, and more. So when supplementing HGH to the human body, we can expect to see improvement in these other hormones as well.
Now, in contrast, pharmaceutical form has a half-life of about 4 hours. So HGH is the mother of all hormones. And this means that it affects every other hormone down the chain.
You clicked on my video. We need IT here.
We need IT. Okay. All right. So, how does HGH work?
Okay, so the next question is, how does HGH work? And we see its effectiveness on cellular metabolism. So it is mediated by IGF-1, which is secreted from the liver. In the beginning, back in the 1950s, exogenous HGH came from human cadavers. Exogenous just means that something that's given to the body from the outside. So this form was eventually banned due to causing prion disease, which, as many of you may know, is mad cow disease. There were just a few cases, but enough to make the common denominator with the cadaver HGH. So in the mid-1980s, the FDA approved the very first synthetic HGH, Somatram, but this was not identical molecularly to the natural HGH. So by the end of the 1980s, with the onset of recumbent technology, we were able to develop an identical synthetic derivative of HGH, which is commonly known as somatropin. And now there are several brand names on the market.
Perfect. All right. What do we see HGH most commonly used for?
So HGH is the most used performance enhancing hormone in the world. HGH is not an anabolic hormone, however, so we're not going to see hair loss, virilization, which means women developing male traits, acne, gynecomastia. That's when men develop breasts, which is secondary to the increase in estrogen levels due to use of anabolic hormones, liver toxicity, edema, hypertension, which are commonly seen with anabolic steroids. So it is used for everything from anti-aging to bodybuilding, and it is actually used by both men and women.
Oh, great. So how can we test HGH levels in the blood reliably?
So HGH is a growth factor, and direct testing is actually very unreliable. It is a natural peptide secreted by the pituitary gland, like I mentioned, in a pulsatory fashion. So for this reason, it does not linger in the blood, but is quickly taken up by the cells, and then it's gone. So because the production of HGH is stored and released by the liver as IGF-1, this is a more reliable measure of HGH production and levels in the human body.
Okay. What are the medical applications of HGH?
So the medical applications of HGH would be children with short stature. This would be treated by a pediatric endocrinologist, AIDS, cachexia, panhypopituitarism, which is when there's damage to the stalk of the pituitary hypothalamus from traumatic brain injury. And what happens is this person is not producing HGH, thyroid hormone, FSH, or LH. And it is a real severe condition, short bowel syndrome, and severe chronic kidney disease. So this is typically given by as an injectable. And there are doctors that are actually prescribing this form for adult growth hormone deficiency syndrome, which they're taking a huge risk at doing.
Okay. What are some of the benefits of HGH in the human body?
So benefits of HGH in the human body, the benefits are actually secondary to the effects of cellular metabolism. So we've got fat loss, visceral fat of the abdomen especially, as well as improvement of lean muscle mass. It has an anabolic effect on growth of muscle, bone, tendon, and other connective tissues. For this reason, it helps with recovery from surgery. However, its anabolic effects are weak as compared to anabolic steroids, testosterone in particular. HGH leads to both hyperplasia and hypertrophy of skeletal muscle. So it grows and recruits satellite cells. And what this means is not only do the cells expand in size, but they increase in number. And this is good news for competitive athletes especially. It regulates carbohydrate metabolism. It decreases insulin sensitivity, which is good news for regulating blood glucose levels and for diabetics. And in the central nervous system, we will see effects of well-being, improve mood, sleep, energy, focus, and cognition. So some people might have a paradoxical effect and feel a little more tired when they use it, but these people would just take it at bedtime. So HGH does not actually have a direct effect on sex drive, but this benefit is typically secondary to the boost in testosterone that you often see by giving HGH. So it's important to note that these effects take time.
Okay. What are some of the risks of taking HGH?
So there are risks in taking HGH, and it is very dose and modality specific. So the risks are more related to excess HGH production and use. And for example, two diseases that we see with endogenous excess HGH production are gigantism of childhood and acromegaly of adulthood. So what we see here is with children, because their epiphyseal plates are still open, they will grow to be very tall. And with adults, there will be an overgrowth of skeletal structure, most notably in the feet, hands, and face, as well as internal organs. And this is typically due to a tumor on the pituitary gland.
Okay.
So there's a strong risk of, as a result, heart disease and diabetes. And so these patients will have a normal life if the problem is treated, which is typically surgical removal of the tumor. So otherwise, their lifespan would be cut by about 10 years. So exogenous use is dose dependent and must be closely monitored with lab work. And some other risks are certain cancers. And we're not going to go into that in detail, but the most concern here is that HGH stimulates IGF-1, which is a marker for cancer. So with the thyroid, HGH can decrease conversion of T3, and this is very dose dependent, and it can cause carpal tunnel syndrome as a secondary to the metabolic defect on the carpal bones and the median nerve neuropathy. So,
all right. Is HGH a replacement for testosterone therapy?
So that's actually a really good question, because we often use hormones in combination to bring the patient into balance. So because HGH is the mother of all hormones, what you'll see is when a patient is supplemented with HGH, you'll see the other hormones down the chain improve. Now, this is very much age and health dependent. So what I often see when I supplement HGH with my patients under 40 typically don't have to be placed on any other hormone replacement therapy. And my patients over 40 typically do, but it's in lesser doses than if we didn't use the HGH.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Is HGH and testosterone, are they able to be used together at the same time?
Yeah, so definitely HGH and testosterone can be used together. And it's recommended that after giving the HGH, if any of the other hormones down the chain are still deficient, to supplement just enough to bring them into balance.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
How is HGH given?
So most commonly HGH is given as an injection.
Okay.
And it is injected sub-Q, which is in the fatty tissues of the body, and it's done daily. Doctors prescribing this form of HGH must monitor labs very closely, as the side effects of overdosing the patient are absolutely irreversible. So there have been oral forms placed on the market, but these don't work since 80% of the hormone is destroyed by digestive enzymes in the gut. The other option is transdermal application, which is proving to be just as effective as the injectable form without the side effects.
Can you kind of expand for me on what transdermal actually means?
So transdermal application means that it's applied to the skin and absorbed directly into the bloodstream. It's important to apply it to the thin skin areas of the body, such as the inner forearms, the top of the hands and feet, and behind the knees, for example. So this has proven to be a very effective way of absorbing medications and other hormones, such as testosterone, into the bloodstream. Okay.
Is there a transdermal product on the market that you know of?
Actually, there is. So Somaderm is the only transdermal HGH product on the market today. And because the manufacturer holds the exclusive patent to this product, it is actually the only effective transdermal HGH on the market. Yeah, there have been other companies trying to mimic the technology, but their products proved to be inferior. And the founder of the Somaderm, he is actually a homeopathic product developer and has been, has 40 years of experience with over 600 products to date. And the Somaderm is actually the company's flagship product.
Oh, very good. So you mentioned the word homeopathy. Can you explain to all of us what homeopathy is?
Definitely. So people are always like, what is homeopathy? It is a very complex medicine, but it's actually very simple on a lot of levels too. Homeopathy is an area of medicine that is rarely understood, and it uses highly dilute substances which are given to turn the body's own healing mechanisms on. So these nanoparticles come from substances extracted from plants, animals, or minerals. And the idea of this medicine is like treats like. So it is used for a variety of conditions, everything from general wellness to chronic disease. There's always a child in the background trying to create some kind of problems. Batman. Let's see, we've lost my train of thought. So it's used in a variety of conditions, everything from general wellness to chronic disease and deficiency syndromes. For example, in terms of improving HGH production, we give substances that support this, such as somatropin, homeopathically. So with the Somaderm, there are actually 3 homeopathic substances that support the entire HPAT axis, plus herbs that support its balance. So the HPAT axis is actually the axis that supports the entire endocrine system from the hypothalamus pituitary to the thyroid gland and the adrenals.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so how long can we expect to have to wait for the benefits of supplemental HGH?
So this is very individual and depending on the patient and their health status.
Okay.
So this holds for injectable as well as transdermal. Okay. So patients with more severe deficiencies, as evidenced by both lab value deficiencies and symptoms, might begin to see benefits right away. However, it's important to give HGH a good 6 months before seeing its long-term benefits. And this is the case with any hormone replacement therapy.
Yes. All right. How long would somebody need to take HGH?
So like any hormone, HGH declines around age 30.
Okay.
And once a hormone declines in production, it will have to be replaced indefinitely.
Oh,
so what happens is if the patient quits taking the HGH or any hormone for that matter, they will go back to baseline.
Okay.
Yeah.
What does cost compare with the different forms of supplemental HGH?
So cost, the injectable form can cost upward around $4,000 per month.
Oh my.
Yeah.
Oh,
and there have been people sacrificing that for years just to get their health, their youth and their vitality back, because it really does work.
It does.
The transdermal HGH costs pennies per day. So, if you think, the cost difference is quite significant.
I would definitely go with the transdermal form. That's amazing.
So there are a couple things to consider here. Injectable HGH is not legal to prescribe to adults with growth hormone deficiency syndrome in most states. So the Somaderm, which is our transdermal form, is as effective as the injectable form without the risk of side effects. So what this means is that the patient can safely use this without monitoring lab values. And, however, many people want to know where their hormone levels lie. And depending on the age of the patient, additional HRT, hormone replacement therapy, might be indicated, like we mentioned earlier. So when taking HGH, this is typically, in lesser amounts, the other hormone replacement. Yeah.
Now let's take a more specific look at Somaderm and how it compares to other HGH boosters.
Sounds good.
All right. So what about secretagogues such as sermorelin and ibutamoren, aka MK677?
Yeah, so that's a mouthful.
I totally said that.
Secretagogues are
Okay.
they're peptides that help the body to do work,
Peptides.
and these are typically injected.
Okay.
So sermorelin and ibutamoren, MK677 are the most commonly seen. So these are frequently used because they build lean muscle mass and burn fat. In terms of benefits to athletes, though, this is used more with recreational athletes since it's actually weak as compared to HGH.
Okay.
So you will see this more often prescribed by medical doctors since prescribing HGH is highly restricted. And so we see this commonly used for anti-aging and weight loss commonly. So these peptides are, also more cost effective than the injectable forms of HGH.
Okay. With that being said, what is your best recommendation for improving HGH levels in adults?
I want to go back, Teresa. I want to touch on sermorelin and ibutamoren because there have been some questions that have come up about these two things.
Perfect.
So let me touch on these and then I'll answer that question.
Okay.
So first, I'm going to start with sermorelin. So sermorelin it was actually developed in the 1980s and approved by the FDA in 1997 and patented with trademark. So its mechanism of action, it's a synthetic analog of endogenous, growth hormone. It's a stimulating peptide for growth hormone, and it converts true growth hormone to IGF-1. So it stimulates the anterior pituitary to help you produce your own HGH. So its clinical use is to actually diagnose failure or lesions of the pituitary gland. And what we're trying to do is see if its production or if the anterior pituitary gland is producing HGH adequately. So it detects HGH deficiency in children. Typically, that was what this was initially used for in medicine. By 2008, this peptide was discontinued because it could not compete with in the marketplace with HGH. Okay. So currently, there are no trade name drugs anywhere in the world for this peptide, but it's still produced in generic form in compounding pharmacies, and clinical uses by common people and and not so much by performance athletes. Okay. It has a very limited effect and wanes off after about 6 months to a year. So it's very limited its use. And basically what we found out is that it has some minimal benefits, but it really doesn't have a real long-term benefit for boosting HGH. Okay. Now, when we look at ibutamoren, which is one of the more focused on peptides for HGH production. Yeah. This peptide is not approved by the FDA. It's still considered an investigational drug. Mm-hmm. So in 2017, preclinical trials were performed with this peptide for HGH deficiency, okay. And it is most common. It is the most common growth hormone secreting peptide. And it stimulates. So this peptide actually stimulates ghrelin receptors in the hypothalamus, which is a hunger hormone. So it increases appetite in addition to increasing energy. So patients that are looking to get lean and lose weight and lose fat at the same time probably would not want to use this peptide. It's a very potent stimulator of HGH to IGF-1, and it sustains elevation of IGF-1 for about 24 hours in the bloodstream. So again, one of its side effects would be to stimulate appetite. Now, it's not tightly regulated and has a spillover effect on other hormones in the body. So we can see some unfavorable side effects, such as elevating cortisol, which can lead to edema, hypertension. It can elevate prolactin levels, which can lower sex drive significantly. And also can cause fatigue, anxiety, palpitations, GERD, and, some issues with diabetes and poor fasting glucose. So the concerns with using secretagogues for HGH, always side effects, plus long-term metabolic effects on the cardiovascular system are going to be a concern.
Okay.
So to your other question, what was your other question again? Can you remind me?
I was going to ask about how does ibutamoren compare, but it feels like you kind of went over that.
Yeah, I touched that.
So I would just say, what is your recommendation for improving HGH level in adults?
So improving HGH level in adults has many great benefits, as I can attest to, my patients can attest to, Teresa can attest to. When it comes to performance athletes, HGH is better than secretagogues for improving lean muscle mass, performance, endurance, energy, and recovery. In terms of which form is best, I would recommend the transdermal over injectable for a few reasons. Okay. First of all, it's more accessible. The transdermal is completely legal, and you can access it without a prescription because it's safe and effective, as opposed to the injectable, which is very limited in how you can access it and the risks of side effects if it's not closely monitored. The transdermal is more cost effective. What you'll see is the transdermal, literally pennies per day, as opposed to upward around $4,000 a month for the injectable. It's just such a difference in cost and availability. The transdermal is non-invasive. You're not having to give yourself an injection every day. And it doesn't require a doctor's prescription, like I said, and it's safe and effective without the risk of irreversible side effects, which, like I said, the side effects from the injectable HGH are absolutely irreversible.
Oh man, how do we get some of this transdermal HGH? Girl, show me the light.
Hook a sister up.
Show me the light. I need this to know.
So transdermal, guys, is really the way to go. And like I said, it's just as effective as the injectable without the risk of side effects and closely monitoring lab values. I do recommend that if you do use the transdermal, that you do monitor your lab values just so you can see how your blood levels are improving. Also, another reason would be because when you're over the age of 40, there may be other treatments that have to be done, maybe on a small scale, but we may have to still, implement some other HRT, but definitely not as much as when we're using the HGH right out of the starting gate. And what I'd recommend for any of you interested in starting with this transdermal HGH product, to contact the person who invited you to this video. They'll be more than happy to help you out, guys. And hey, if you're not using this product at this point, I highly recommend that you do, because, there is actually nothing in the world like it. We do hold the exclusive rights to this product, and we are happy to share it with the world.
I'll share it with everybody. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Dr. Munoz, for giving everybody the goods.
Yeah, so this is a wrap, guys. Thanks for joining. We didn't come last Thursday night because, well, we just had some technical difficulties. But we're going to get this figured out. We're going to start doing live with Zoom. I've been trying all week to figure out how to go live on Facebook with Zoom, and I haven't been able to figure it out yet. So hopefully by next week, I'll I'll have a little bit of more experience with that, and you'll be able to see us both on the same video. But in the meantime, you guys be well, and please let us know how we can help you to improve your health.
Thank you, guys.
Have a great night.
Bye. See you next week.
Love you guys.